Hey, I'm Magic, and this is Trendlines, brought to you by OraclesElixir.com. We're going to talk about whose stock is rising and falling in the NA LCS following Week 8 of the 2017 Spring Split. It's a jungler-themed show today, so let's dive in with a player I've always personally found a bit difficult to read, Svenskeren. I got some flack in the offseason when I suggested that TSM could consider replacing their jungler. I wrote an article. I said, their support position might be one they could look at if they want to make any changes, and jungler would be the second one. You could still debate the way I presented that and what my replacement suggestions were, but let's just check in on Svenskeren and see how he's doing in the post double lift days. So here are some interesting numbers. And this doesn't tell the whole story, but it's kind of illustrates the point. Among North America's 11 junglers who have started 10 games or more, Svenskeren ranks last in gold difference at 10 minutes, 9th in experience difference at 10 minutes, 9th in first blood rate. He's 10th in kill participation, last in death share with 27.5% death share. And as kind of an aside on those two numbers, this is not atypical for him. Those kill participation and death share kind of balance there. In both spring and summer 2016, he had the second lowest kill participation on the team, only ahead of Hanser. And if your top laner does not have your lowest kill participation, there's something very strange about your team. And he also had the highest death share on TSM in spring 2016, second highest death share behind Hanser. Again, your top laner should probably be having a higher death share in the summer split. So that's fine for him to have a lower kill participation, higher death share, as long as he's kind of contributing in a lot of the subtle ways that he did in 2016, the way he managed jungle invades and counter jungling, the way he participated in rotations, and he always had that damage carry potential, playing the Kindred or things like this, Graves that couldn't carry in team fights. Those elements have been less consistent for him this split, so seeing the same balance of low kill participation, really, really high death share, that's a bit troubling. While all this is going on, he does lead all junglers in wards per minute, so that's really good to see him stepping up on the vision game, and that's one of the subtle ways that he's trying to contribute. But statistically speaking, just taking all of those numbers in a vacuum, he's kind of been a bit of a ward bot. I mean, good for him, but there's a lot more that TSM needs to see from him. Looking at the way he played last week, you look back at Game 1 versus FlyQuest, he gave Moon a free Rengar snowball by giving up the first blood on a mistake in his early pathing. He wasn't very proactive on the Gragas throughout the game, and he really needed to be a playmaker and initiator on the Gragas, otherwise there's no point picking the champion. Game 2 against FlyQuest, he was again, Moon really outpathed him, did a lot more on the map, and Svenskeren was slow to read and react to what Moon was doing. He had played a very standard jungle path and didn't really figure out kind of what was going on around the map quite in time. TSM still pulled that one together, but Svenskeren wasn't really leading the way. Game 3 against FlyQuest, Svenskeren performed better. He didn't really assert himself and take over the game or anything like that, but he was cleaner and he kind of got it together. Looking at the Echo Fox series, Game 1 was really interesting if you watched the way TSM played that one out. They put a lot of coordinated team effort into getting vision on the enemy jungler, tracking Acadian, setting Svenskeren up to protect his jungle pathing, make sure that he could succeed in the early game. He still lost a duel early on where he was level 5, Acadian was level 4, and Acadian came in and invaded on Svenskeren and made him flash out of his own jungle. But he didn't give up a death, he didn't give up a snowball. TSM got him through it, and Svenskeren was able to carry the game with damage, which was great. Game 2 against Echo Fox, Svenskeren, he was just better all around. He kind of got it together. He coordinated really well with Biofrost. Those two moved around the map a lot together, and he just had a strong showing. So he kind of got better throughout the weekend. He got better throughout each series, and it really felt like TSM identified a need to help him out and allow him to be more successful, and they made it happen. So I'd say looking at all these things with Svenskeren, his split has not been great. I'd argue he hasn't played that differently overall from the way he's played in the past, but the team setup around him is a bit different. It seems like TSM has been needing to identify more ways to make him comfortable, allow him to be successful, rather than Svenskeren finding ways to make his team successful, which is what a lot of teams would really want from their jungler, is him setting up the rest of his team. So it depends a little bit on meta and things like this, but when Svenskeren is coordinating with his team, when he's getting the backup on his counter jungling, when he's working with his support or whoever else for vision, he can be really good in those ways. And also, I think historically, especially last year, we saw that when he can carry with damage and when he's set up for that, that's a space that he's really good in. But he's not really the kind of jungler that drives the team's pace, makes a bunch of plays, and kind of pulls the team in his wake. I'd argue he's never really been that kind of player. He's definitely not been that player this split, and that has put some more weight onto Hauntzer's shoulders, onto Bjergsen's shoulders. That's a big part of what has made Hauntzer's play this split so impressive, and why he's having such a great campaign and why he deserves so much recognition. But Svenskeren, his stock has been falling all split. I think it's becoming more noticeable at different times, partly in contrast to what the rest of his teammates are doing, and I really want to see him, both find the team, have them finding more consistent ways to work around him and use him, and him find more consistent ways to not be someone who needs the team to set him up, but that he can be the one setting up his team. We're going to move on to another jungler. This is someone whose stock is rising, in my opinion, and it's not so much rising recently as has been consistently high all season and needs to get more and more recognition, but I want to talk about Lira from Envy. So this is a guy who was coming into the split. There were all these big-name Korean acquisitions coming in. He was flying under the radar a bit, just in terms of, he doesn't match up to the name power of a Someday or someone like that, but people who watched him on the Afrika Freaks, a team that, wasn't really high profile in Korea, but people who watched him there knew how good he was. He was one of the stronger players on that team. He was really going to be interesting to watch, and he has been. He's been really great this split. He's getting praise from some corners. There are certain people, especially on Twitter, who love to kind of sing his praises, but again, kind of like when he was on the Freaks, he's not on a high-profile team. In fact, he's on the last-place team in North America. They're not high-profile, don't have the biggest League of Legends fan base. So I'm not sure that people recognize just how great Lira has been in that context. His statistical profile, if we're just going to start with there, it's so much more attractive than Svenskeren's. So you've got him with kind of a mid-tier KDA, but he's got the second highest kill participation, so that's the opposite of Svenskeren among junglers, starting junglers. He's got the second lowest death share at just 18.8%, so that's almost 10 percentage points lower than Svenskeren. He leads all junglers in gold difference and experience difference at 10 minutes. He's slashing 227 gold, 306 experience up on his opponent. He's got the highest CS per minute of all junglers. He's got the second highest wards per minute behind Svenskeren. And one place where his numbers do fall short is in damage output. But he's only got 303 damage per minute on average, which is 10th of the 11 junglers. But it's important to note that he has played 7 games on Rek'Sai, 8 games on Lee Sin, and 6 games on Elise. All 3 of those champions average really low damage per minute numbers, so that really biases his damage numbers a lot, and you can't really put much weight into them. The death share number is one that really stands out to me, because a lot of the times, especially on a jungler who's playing more of the tanks or more of the playmakers, Rek'Sai, Lee Sin, Elise, all 3 of those, people who can set up and make plays, especially early on, you might expect to see a little bit higher death share as they put themselves into harm's way, make a play, maybe pay for it with some deaths. But it shows that partly that he's not giving up a lot of needless deaths, but also that his teammates are giving up a lot of deaths. Ninja has over a 24% death share, which is not good for a mid laner. Seraph is at 23%, so those two are the ones who have been dying the bulk of the time. And Lira, he's the one who's not giving away these free deaths, and he's kind of, you kind of feel for him as he has to watch his teammates, especially Ninja has really not been good this split. And Lira's just trying to kind of help them through it all. I think looking at Game 2 against Cloud9 last week is a really good case in point to what Lira does for this team and kind of the difficulty he's had bringing his team forward and setting them up for success. Because you look at that way, he was playing Elise. He ganked all 3 lanes pretty early on, and every single time his teammates messed it up somehow. They either went in too early, trying to receive the gank before he was ready to pull the trigger. So they may have telegraphed it, and that's why they had to go early, or they just didn't communicate well. They tried to bait. I believe it was the first gank for Seraph. He was kind of trying to bait for a lane gank where Lira had come to hide in the brush. And it was pretty telegraphed that he was trying to bait. Impact read it really well and just didn't bite. And so, these kinds of things happen in all 3 lanes. And Lira was in the right places at the right times and just didn't get the setups to be successful. Even despite that, he was still out farming contracts throughout the early game. He got more deep vision and he kept invading, and he didn't have winning lanes or any noticeable help from like Ninja roaming or Hakuho roaming to help him out. He did this all on his own. He set up his team so well to win that early game really hard, and they just couldn't take advantage of his setups. It was really frustrating to watch, and that's basically a microcosm of the entire split for them. So I just really want to sing the praises of Lira, make sure that when you watch Envy and watch the way Lira plays, you appreciate what he's doing for that team, because he's by far the leading candidate in North America this split for the best player on the worst team. The other two candidates that come to mind for me on that are Froggen for Echo Fox, Rainover for Team Liquid, but Lira is just in a different class in terms of what he's doing and what his teammates are doing around him. I want to call out one other thing. There are a couple of unstable teams where I'm not really sure if they're going to rise or fall moving forward, but Cloud9, we saw some reduced coordination from them in Week 8. It seems like some of their communication has been getting worse over time instead of better. It's been kind of inconsistent. They've still had some good moments, but also some bad ones. We've seen inconsistent showings from contracts, games where he looks really weak, and then he follows it up with a really good game. And, that Baron steal and everything was really hyped. So I just want to see more consistency from them. I want to see them play really well against Dignitas and against Phoenix 1 next week, enter the playoffs on a positive note, because, I just want to see the best competition possible. Also unstable, Immortals. Not surprising, they're on this upward swing and everybody's really enjoying talking to them. It's not surprising that they can win games against good teams. They've always been a swingy team. They will always be a swingy team as long as Dardoch is there, because that's just who he is as a player. He can explode and do really well. He can also explode and do really poorly. So that's he kind of drives his team's whole pace that way. So we've seen plenty of their highs. We've seen plenty of their lows. It's kind of hard to predict what we're going to get for them in Week 9 against CLG and Dignitas. But so they're just kind of unstable. I'm not really sure what to expect from them yet. I wouldn't be surprised if they took both series. I wouldn't be surprised if they lost both series. I just don't know what to see. And that kind of makes them fun to watch, but also a little bit frustrating. So this has been Trendlines for Week 8 of the NA LCS. Remember to check out oracle.elixir.com for in-depth team, player, and champion stats and analysis.